This is Gemara in Yoma Daf Samachay. Today's Shir has been sponsored as Vessel's Chos for Shlema for Esther Kayla Bas Etol. She should have a complete recovery, and as well, she should only hear Besurais Taivis. Of course, Ola Chaylim Amen B'Migel Chaim Mesar Som Simon Reis Dizor Basinan Basim Chaysay Yisol B'Mindol Eliezer Perez B'Shavlei Shomas Naomi B'Shavig B'Shirchan Shmol B'Ntila Dim Chan Reis B'Chai B'Vina Liv Rachos B'Musa Dinainu B'Shin Minel Svim B'Fegel B'Rm Mechel Esperance Elihuva Rivkot Hashem of Tel Svim Mechel Esther B'Say Shar Chali Yisrael as well as Choshirach V'Atalei Basita and Yisrael Chaim ben Devaira. We are holding on Samach Gimel Amid Beis. Samach Dalit Amid Beis. We are holding 3 lines from the bottom. Tinan, the last word on the 4th line from the bottom. Tinan. She'ein chatos sibur mesa. We're going to have a bit of an introduction. Let's just read a few words and then we'll explain. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah explained, She'ein chatos sibur mesa. When you have a chatos sibur, which for some reason we're not using, which we'll explain in one moment, you do not let it be put to death. Rather, what do? Yireh asheti saiv. You let it graze until it gets a mum, and then you bring it, you sell it, and give the money to the Beis HaMikdash. The yachid, the implication of our Mishnah is the yachid ki agavna Mesa. And based off of this, we're going to have a kasha between the machlokes Rav Yochanan and Rav, so we're going to have to now remind ourselves 2 things. What's the machlokes Rav Yochanan and Rav? Where are we coming from the Mishnah? And then we could go headstrong into today's daf. So we had a Mishnah. What was the case of the Mishnah? And the Mishnah was we have our Seirim, Seir Mishtalech, and Seir LaHashem. And the case of the Mishnah was that one of them drops dead. So what do? We bring 2 new Seirim, 2 new goats. And what do? We do a new girl. And then we say that if the one that was LaHashem died, the new one that's LaHashem takes his place. And we discussed yesterday extensively what is the other animal. Let's play it out like we said yesterday. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have Seir LaHashem and Seir LaAzazel. Seir LaHashem and Seir LaAzazel of the new Gairel. What happens? Seir LaHashem drops dead. What's left? Seir LaAzazel. So what do we have now? A new Seir LaHashem, a new Seir LaAzazel. So the Seir LaHashem died. So this Seir LaHashem takes its place. Beautiful. Which one is the Seir LaAzazel? That was a machlokes, Rav Yochanan and Rav. Based upon the details of our Balei Chayim Nidachin or not, Rav Yochanan says, yes, once you're pushed off, you're pushed off. So this animal, this Seir LaAzazel that did nothing wrong, it's alive and healthy. But since there was a moment of time when the first one died, this one as well is now brought. Says Rav Yochanan, the whole carbon comes from the new set, the Seir LaHashem and the Seir LaAzazel. What do you do with this animal? That is today's discussion. Yesterday we dealt extensively which animal is the new LaAzazel, the new LaHashem. But now what do we do with the remaining animal? So according to both Rav Yochanan and Rav, the remaining animal is Yireh. According to Rav Yochanan, it's this animal over here, number 2. According to Rav, we say no. This animal remains at Seir LaAzazel. Which one? It's the new animal that we don't know what to do with, the new Seir LaAzazel, and that one is Yireh. That one grazes until it gets its mum. We sell it and we give it to the Beis HaMikdash. The Mishnah explained the reason why it grazes is because she'ein chatos sibur mesa. Because when you have a chatos sibur, we're not going to let it put to death. Normally, we have a lach l'Moshe Messinai, and this is the new detail everyone should clue in. Normally, we have a lach l'Moshe Messinai. Then when we have a chatos, that the owner received its kapara from elsewhere, and we have a leftover chatos here, what do you do with that chatos? It is mesa. It is put to death. But over here, we learned that in chatos sibur mesa. What's the implication? Like we just spoke out. Hadi yachid, in the case of not a chatos sibur, but a chatos yachid, ki hai gavna, in a similar context. What's going to be a similar context that we're going to have? We'll explain in one moment. Actually, let's explain right now. What's a similar context? Is that, let's say someone has a carbon chatos and it gets lost. And this is really, if anyone wants to see inside, this is what this big Rashi is explaining right now, based on the Gemara in Tamura Daf Chav Gimel. Let's say someone has a carbon chatos that gets lost. What does he do? He separates a new animal. And like we spoke yesterday, of course, comes along Murphy's Law. And the moment you separate the new animal, you find the old animal. What do you do now? What do you do now? You have 2 animals in front of you. Which one is the carbon chatos? So this is going to be a case, seemingly, that what should come out? What should come out is that in this case, we should say that it is chatas sibur it's a chatas yachid. So one of them you bring is a chatas. What do you do with the other one? Mesa, you let it die. You don't let it just get a muam, you let it die. And this maybe would be comparable to our Mishnah. Similar in our Mishnah that we had an extra sir la'azazel, similar, or sir la'Hashem. Similar in this case, you have an extra chatas. And in this case, it would seem that if it's a carbon yachid, the halacha should be that it is going to be Mesa. But now the Gemara says this only works according to Rav Yochanan, not according to Rav. Let's let the Gemara explain. Bishlama le Rav Yochanan, kid Rav Abba Amar Rav. Rav Yochanan who again held Balei Chayim Nidachin, which is the animal which is brought as a carbon, the new Lazazel, which is the animal that's left to graze, the old one. So Rav Yochanan could explain like Rav Abba Amar Rav. What's Rav Abba Amar Rav? Dam Rav Abba Amar Rav. Moving along to, Samachay Amar Aleph. Today's Gemara, Rav Abba Amar Rav explains that Hakol Moedim, everyone agrees. Who's everyone? So now there's another Akdama that we need. This is a machlokes Rebbe and Chachamim with regard to that case that we just said of a chatas that is lost and you find the chatas subsequently. What is the halacha? That is a machlokes between Rebbe and the Chachamim. The basic machlokes is, when you have that excess leftover animal, Rebbe says, it dies. The Chachamim say, no, you let it graze until it gets a mum. But the question is, where is this machlokes Rebbe and the Chachamim talking about? What is the case? So Rav Abba Amar Rav just says, Hakol Moedim on the top of the Amid, She'im Niskaper B'She'inoi Avuda. Again, we have the Avuda, the animal which is lost, which we'll call number 1. Then we have the new animal, which we'll call number 2. Says Rav Abba Amar Rav that everyone agrees that if the Einoi Avuda, the new animal is one that you bring as a chatos, then Avuda Mesa, then the one that was lost dies. That's not the machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rebbe. The Rebbe and the Chachamim. The machlokes Rebbe and the Chachamim is only if you got the kapara through the avuda, through the new carbon. Again, let's play this out. I know there's a lot of off the page over here, but that's what's going on today. I apologize. That what's going on over here is, again, I have a chatas that gets lost, I bring a new chatas. So the chatas that gets lost, we're calling that number 1. The new chatas, we're calling number 2. Rav Abba Amar Rav explains that if we got the kapara via the enoi avuda, number 2, everyone agrees that number 1 is going to die. The machlokes Rebbe and the Chachamim, that Rebbe teaches us that it dies, the Chachamim teaches us that it goes and grazes, is only in a case when we have to know what do you do with number 2. Meaning that number 1, the original animal you brought as a carbon. Now you have this new animal. What is that status? Does this new animal slide into the original status or no? And this is where the Rabbanan say, no, the new animal is not like the original animal, and that's the reason why it's not Tammuz. Rather it is Tira, rather it grazes. But again, according to Rav Yochanan, everything is good and dandy. Because according to Rav Yochanan, this case that Rav Abba Amar Rav explains that if you got the kapara via the Einoi Avuda, via number 2, that's Gevaldik. That's exactly Rav Yochanan's case. What was Rav Yochanan's case? Again, we have the 2 Seirim and the 2 Seirim. Rav Yochanan said, Nidcha, it's thrown away. You get the kapara from the new one. Gevaldik, you get the kapara from the new one. That's exactly like getting a kapara from the Einoi Avuda, from number 2. And in this case, what's going to be the parallel? It's going to be Mesa, everyone agrees. So now it makes sense that the Mishnah taught us Shein Chata Sibur Mesa. But in this case, which is not a Chata Sibur, it will not be Mesa. So Rav Yochanan is golden. Elo Rav, says the Gemara. According to Rav, we run into an issue. Because according to Rav, again, according to the Shita of the Rabbanon, like we just said, that it's Tireh, it's of course no good. But what about according to Rebbe that says it's Mace? It's not going to work either. Because the way that Rav is going to be learning is that even according to Rebbe, it's only going to die if it's a case where the second animal is coming to fix the first animal. But in this case, that's not the scenario. Because why does Rebbe hold? Or I should say better, why does Rav hold normally Bali Chayim are not Nidche? So it's still alive and well. But in a case where what's that case? is a case where I separate two different animals and I say that one is going to bring a carbon and the other one is there as a backup. That's going to be a case which is comparable to our case. And in that case, it's not going to go and die. So we're seeing that according to Rav, the way that he's going to learn the machlokes between Rebbe and the Chachamim, it's not going to work. Because the way that Rav learns the machlokes, Rebbe and Chachamim, it's going to be comparable to a case of Chatos, that you made two of them for achrayis, and there the halacha is that it's not going to die. So why did the Mishnah say, and this is the big question after we read only 5 lines today, 10 minutes into the shir, what is the question? That according to Rebbe, that holds that Baalei Chayim are not nidcha, and therefore which one is the carbon? The first one. And which one it goes and grazes? The second one. The Mishnah says the reason why the second one goes grazes is because ein chatos sibor meisa, and this one, the second one, is a chatos Sibur. Implied, if it's a Chatos Yachid, it would yes be Mesa. But we see that the way the Rebbe is going to learn the machlokes between Rav and the Chachamim. Excuse me. We see the way that Rav is going to learn the machlokes in Rebbe and the Chachamim. It's going to come out. It's like a case of Shtei Chatois V'Achrayis, which is not going to die. Says the Gemara of Amar Rav Oishia, like we just explained. Here for Shtei Chatois V'Achrayis, Mischaber B'Achas Mehem V'Ashniya Tireh. And the second one is going to go and graze. And that is a big problem. The problem is, because this is a case of a carbon yachid, and according to what we just built up, it should come out that only in our Mishnah by a carbon tzibur is it tira, does it graze. But by a carbon yachid, it should die. We see clearly that it's not dying according to Rebbe. Explains the Gemara. No big deal. Kiv and Amar Rava. Since Rava taught us that Rav Savla Kirav Yoisi. Rav, again, this whole big question was according to Rav that El Baalei Chayim are not nidcha, are now pushed off. Therefore, the first carbon comes from the first animal. What's the reason we learned yesterday? So like Rabbi Yosi, Tamar Mitzvah Berishain. Therefore, Meikara Kimafresh Liibadami. So it comes out, says the Gemara, a fascinating idea. According to Rav, he goes with Rabbi Yosi, so he's going to hold. There's no question that when you separate these two animals and you do a new gyral, there is no question that both of these animals will be the mitzvah. You know why? Because Rabbi Yosi says mitzvah b'rishain, and the rishain is sitting here. So as much as Rav's going to hold, of course, you need to separate two animals. You're going to have to make a new gyral. How do I mean in the world that this second animal is going to be the one to take its place? Because it's as if kimafresh liibod dami. Says the Gemara. Beautiful. We defended Rav. We defended Rav, yes. Now, let's bring another Mishnah as a raya to Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan who holds the Chata Sibur, that Baalei Chayim are yes nidcha, you yes push them off. Therefore, where does the new carbon come from? The new animals. Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah, and no one should get nervous. That was the hardest part of today. This is the second hardest part of today. And Mirz Hashem in 2 minutes. We'll be in the clear for smooth sailing. Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah, Rav Yehuda Imer Thomas. What did Rav Yehuda in the end of the Mishnah? The end of our Mishnah, Rav Yehuda added on. And Rav Yehuda said that it's going to go and die. What's the case? We're not sure. But the Havamina is that Rav Yehuda is talking back to the Rabbanon. That we've been learning the whole day today that the Rabbanon held that this excess animal, whatever it is, whether it's 2, whether it's 4, Rabbi Yochanan, that this excess, Rabbi Yochanan, I keep on making the same mistake, that the excess animal is going to be what we learned according to the Chachamim, it's tirei, it grazes. According to Rav Yehuda, no. It gets killed. Says the Gemara, 1 second. So we're assuming again that Rav Yehuda is talking back to the Chachamim. And whatever case the Chachamim said Tireh, which of course is dependent upon the machlokes Rav Yochanan and Rav, whether it's the first animal, whether it's the fourth animal, that's going to be the case that Rav Yehuda says Thomas. So explains the Gemara, Bishlam the Rav Yochanan Damar Sheinei Shebezug Rishain, according to Rav Yochanan. And he learns that Baalei Chayim are nidcha. Therefore, which is the animal that grazes? The first animal, number 2. Yireh, the Rav Yehuda Yoma, according to Rav Yehuda, that animal dies. But it's no problem, because Miskaper B'Sheni, Shebzlik Sheni. Where does the kapara come from? Number 4. Elo le Rav Damar Sheni, Shebzlik Sheni Yireh. Rav says no. Which is the one that goes and has to graze is number 4. Because Rav holds they're not nidcha, it's not pushed away, and this original animal is sitting sitting here good and dandy the whole time. But Rav Yehuda holds nitche. So we have a problem now. Rav Yehuda Yamus, Rav Yehuda b'may mechaper. Again, so the hidden detail that again the Gemara did not speak out is that we know that Shitas Rav Yehuda we learned 2 days ago is he goes nitche. So if Rav Yehuda goes nitche, he can't be talking back to the Tanakama, the Rabban, because according to Rav, that Bali Chayim are not nitche. According to Rav, which is the animal that grazes the second animal? If Rav Yehuda says that that second animal goes and gets killed, and Rav Yehuda holds nitche, so the first animal's not here, we have no animal left for the kapara. We're up the creek without a battle. We're left without a Sir Lazazel. Answers the Gemara, the obvious teretz, misavis Rav Yehuda Asheni Shebzak Sheni Kai. Rav Yehuda is not talking directly back to the Chachamim, but rather Rav Yehuda Asheni Shebzak Rishon Kai. He's going back on the Sheni of the Zagrishan because Rav Yehuda holds Balei Chayim Nitzcha, like the opinion of Rav Yochanan, and that is how we defend again Rav, and no longer we don't have a raya either way. And now we conclude, as the Gemara has a different lashon, says the Gemara, there are those who ask what we learned before as follows: Vayidam Rav Yehuda nishbach adam, Yoma hamishtalech, Meis hamishtalech, yishbach adam. So b'Shlomo Rav, Reisha, the first part of the Mishnah is pligi b'chata sibur, teaching us the chiddush that chata sibur does not get killed, but rather goes and grazes till it gets a mum. V'seif pligi b'alei chayim, and the seif is telling me a new chiddush of Bali Chayim, whether it's nidcher or not. Rav Yochanan, my void. What's the second case? Rav Yochanan learned the first case as discussing whether Bali Chayim nidcher. Says the Gemara Kasha, that is indeed not simple to understand. That was the difficult part of today's daf. Hopefully everyone's still with me. 16 minutes in. Take a deep breath, have a drink, and Amir Tashem, we're in the clear. Says the Hilige Gemara about the 2 dots, smack in middle of Samachei Amar Aleph Oidam Rav Yehuda Nishvach Adam Yom Muz HaMishalech. If the blood spills, the blood of the Seir LaHashem, which we've dealt extensively, you shecht it, you sprinkle it lefnai v'lefnim, you sprinkle it on the pareiches, you mix it, you put it on the mizbeach. But what happens if you drop the blood spills? Says the Gemara, if the blood of the Seir LaHashem spills, I understand that the Seir LaZazel has to be killed. You know why? The Kati lo yisav mitzvasa, because since it didn't do its mitzvah yet, and since you don't have a Seir LaHashem, we know they go hand in hand. So Seir LaHashem's not here, Seir LaZazel's not here. Sir LaHashem is finished, you need a new one, you need a new Sir LaZazel, they go hand in hand. Elo, but in another case, Misa Mishtaleach. What happens if that Sir LaZazel, which many people have been asking, if that Sir LaZazel drops dead? Ama Yishbach Adam. What's the reason that you have to take the blood of the Sir LaHashem and spill it? So everyone's wondering, what do you mean? Of course, because they go hand in hand. Says the Gemara, no. So the Seir LaZazel already accomplished its task. As Rashi explains that the only time, meaning it only goes one direction, the only time you really need the Seir LaZazel there is during the Hagrala, during the Gairah, the lottery. That's when you need it alive and well. But once the lottery is finished, the Gemara thinks right now, what's the rest of the process of the Seir LaZazel? It's even done with not Koyahanim. Bringing it to the cliff could be done with even a non-Koyin. So the Gemara doesn't think that's an integral part of the Avodah. And therefore, if the Seir LaZazel drops dead, the Gemara is asking, what's the big deal? Keep the Seir LaHashem around. Answers the Gemara, Amri Dvei Rav Yanai Amar Kra, it says in the Torah, Yamar Chai Lefnei Hashem, the Chaper. How long does it have to be alive? At Shas, Matandam, Shal Chaver has to be alive until the end of the Avodah, and that's the reason why. If Seir LaHashem drops dead, what do you got to do? You got to get rid of the Seir LaZazel. If the Seir LaZazel drops dead, you got to get rid of the Seir LaHashem. Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah that's going to sound a bit random, a din of Rav Yehuda, but we'll see from the progression of the Gemara that this is going to come full circle. Tanan Hasam, a bit of a review from that which we learned in Shkalim. B'nei Yair, but anyone who didn't learn Shkalim, don't worry, because the Gemara is going to quote the entire Mishnah. B'nei Yair, shezolchu eshekleim. We know that everyone had to give a machzah shekel every year, but sometimes people were lazy, couldn't come to the Beis HaMikdash, so they pooled all their Shkalim together, they took a shliach, and the shliach brought up all the coins, no big deal. But what happened is, the shliach got into a bit of a situation, and the coins got stolen or lost. In Nitzur Mutruma, if the Lishka, if the Beis HaMikdash already separated the coins for that year, then Nishbay and the Gizbarim. Then the Gizbar, the Beis HaMikdash, is one that takes a loss. So you got to swear to the Gizbar that you weren't Paisheya, etc. You were negligent. Vim Lav, Nishbay and the Bnei Yair. If not yet, then the Bnei Yair, people are going to have to give new coins because they didn't separate them yet from the Beis HaMikdash. If they have to separate new coins, you have to swear to them. You didn't do anything anything wrong. They separate new coins. Now everyone already starts to see how this sounds a bit like our case. What happens if you find the coins that were lost, or the ganavim return them? The halacha is, says the Mishnah Machlokes, elu ve'elu shkalim. They both have a din of a shekel, ve'in oilin lahen l'shana haba. Says the Tanakama, they're a shekel and they don't work for the bailam at all. They all go to the Beis Hamikdash, and next year the owner has to give a shekel again. But Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, oilin l'shana haba. It goes to the Beis Hamikdash, but we have one on credit. And then for next year, all those people who sent those shkalim will not have to send a shekel. Machlokes Tanakama, Rabbi Yehuda. We're going to hone in on Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said that when the shkalim are lost, and then subsequently found, or that the ganavim, the robbers return it, you give it all to the Beis Hamikdash, but we get one on credit. Next year, those owners do not have to give a new shekel. My time, the Rabbi Yehuda says the Gemara, my Rava, because of Rabbi Yehuda, Chayvay shel shanazu. A fundamental yesod, a fundamental idea Rabbi Yehuda holds. When I have an obligation from year this, I could bring it for year that, with rollover points, rollover minutes. When I have an obligation for this year, if I didn't bring it for this year, it works. If I'm bringing it could be brought for next year, and therefore I'm not going to have to bring a new shekel next year. So, Eisvei Abayi, and this is what this has to do with our discussion. Par v'sayer shal Yom Kippurim shavdu. Similar to the case we've been discussing, but let's say now the par or the sayer got lost on Yom Kippur. V'fer shachreim dachteim, and you separate a new one. V'chein siyar v'dezar shavdu, or siyar v'dezar, they got lost. V'shachreim dachteim. Kulam yamusu, Devi Rabbi Yehuda holds. What is the halacha? The halacha is kulam yamusu. They all have to be left to die. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon, Ayrim, Yiru Ashistavu, Yimkar Yiplu Demein Lenadava. No, you let it graze. You let it graze until. You let it graze until the. One more time, you let it graze until it gets a mom, and then you sell it. She'ein chata sibur mesa. Again, what was this last case that we just said? The last case was we have the par of Yom Kippur, we have this year of Yom Kippur. All of a sudden, oh shoot, where did the animals go? We lost it. So what do? We separate another one. This is the point that the price didn't really speak out. You separate another one, and then lo and behold, you find the first one. So now you have two animals. What do? Says the Gemara Machlokes Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda says, Yamusu, you find the animal, it has to be put to death. Rav Shimon says no, you let it graze, which of course, by the way, was our Mishnah. Our Mishnah was similar to Rav Shimon, that what's going on over here, you let it graze until it gets a mom, and then you sell it, and you give the money as an adavas donation to the Beis Hamikdash. What's the problem? That's a stira in Rabbi Yehuda. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, what did Rabbi Yehuda just tell us a moment ago? That from year number 1 could be brought in year number 2. So why over here does Rabbi Yehuda say, Yamusu? What's the big deal? Save this year, save the par, and bring it next year to the Beis Hamikdash. Omar Le, Rava responds over to Samachei Amar Beis Karbonoi Sibur Kahamrit. Shiny Karbonoi Sibur K'Rav Tuvi Amar Rav Yeshia Damar Rav Tuvi Amar Rav Yeshia Omar Kra. We have a special pasuk about Karbonei Sibur Zois. Oilas Chodesh Bechadshei Amra Torah Chadesh. Renew, as always, be fresh and new. V'havili Karban Mitruma Chadasha. Says the Gemara, theoretically, you're right. The idea of Rabbi Yehuda would allow you to bring that Karban next year, but Lamaisa, we have a special pasuk. Chadesh, renew with vigor. Let's be new Karban each year. Therefore, we cannot let it stay around for next year. Says the Gemara, beautiful. Hatinach Seir. I understand. This year is a din of a Karban Sibur. But par? Who paid for the par? We spoke about this already. Par of that unique dichotomy. One level gave a kapara to the Sibur, other end it was paid from the Kohen Gadol's own pocket. So says the Gemara, par, ma'ikla meimar. Because the par is not a Karban Sibur at the same level, we'll say it like that. Explains the Gemara, you're right. Gezerah para this year. We make a gezerah. You're right. Theoretically, the par, you should be let to stick around till next year, according to Rabbi Yehuda. And then next year, you'll use that par. We make a gezerah. We don't let you because we're afraid you're going to do it with the seir. And the seir was a Karban Sibur, and the Karban Sibur has to be new every single year. Says the Gemara, Mishum gezerah yamusu. Because of a gezerah, you're going to let the animal go and die. Question number 1. Question number 2, V'ayid hadarav tuvi amarav yoshia. Hadirav Tuvia, Amrav Yesha Gufa Mitzvahi. That whole halacha that we just quoted, Chadesh, Binu, make sure everything is fresh. That's only a mitzvah. It's not likuv. It doesn't hold you back. That's a lichatchila. Amrav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Karbana Yisibur Abayim Becha Benisan. The Karbana Yisibur which are brought on the first of Nisan, mitzvah lavi min achadash. You bring them from the new monies and havi min hayashan. Yatsa mitzvah, you lost out on a mitzvah because it's supposed to be the new ones. But what do we see? We see it's only a lechatchila. So why are you telling me that karbana yisibur, therefore you can't save it to next year? You could save it to next year. Why could you save it to next year? Just a mitzvah to be new. But who's to say that the mitzvah is going to outweigh and make this animal go and die? Ella Amar Rav Zera Nutaretz. Says Rav Zera, you know the reason why, according to Rav Yehuda in this brisa, we're letting the par of the seir go and die. Lefish Eina Gairil Kaiveya. Mishana lechaverta. A special halacha about Yom Kippur. How do we determine which animal is Azazel, which animal is Hashem? The whole parak was one big gairil, one big ladder. He says the Gemara, the gairil only works for 1 year. Doesn't work for next year. Says the Gemara, beautiful. V'neisi v'nagel, meisi v'nagril. So save it to next year and make a new gairil. Says the Gemara, no. You're going to think that the gairil is the one that's working from 1 year to the next. People are not going to realize that you made a new gairil, so we're not going to let you do it. Says the Gemara, Teina Seir, Par, Michael, and Meimar. Very good, the Seir. What are you going to say about the Par? The Par has nothing to do with the gairil. The Par is the unique carbon of the Kohen and the Kohen's family, etc. Explains the Gemara again, Xer Paro to Seir. Says the Gemara, Mishab Xer Yamusu, Amru Rabbanik Hamed Dabaya, Xera Mishab Chatas, Shamesu Baila. A different Gezerah, a different case of a Chatas, we're afraid they're going to mess up. In that case, I think you can bring it. That's why you don't bring this case over here. Again, Hatinach Par, Seir Michael and Meimar, Xer Seir Atu Par, Mishab Xer Yamusu, El Gezerah Mishab Chatas, Shav Rashinasa, Gezeri Gufa. Says the Gemara, Chatas Shav Rashinasi, but that itself, that what? And we're going to stop with this. We're not going to get involved. Let's just explain one more dot. The question was, it is a chata shavar shenasa. Meaning what? Meaning that this animal has to be less than 1 year old. If we save it to next year, it's going to be more than 1 year old. So it's not a gzeira. It's automatically can always be more than 1 year old. The Gemara now is going to have a fancy footwork math equation how we're going to make it fit with Rebbe. We'll get back with here tomorrow. But let's remember, we're in the middle of a larger discussion of Stira and Rabbi Yehuda. That Rabbi Yehuda taught us that you're allowed to save something from year number 1 to bring it in year number 2. We had a Stira from our Mishnah that seemingly Rabbi Yehuda said, no, Yamusu, you're not allowed to. We've had multiple teruts and multiple attempts. We'll pick up from here tomorrow.